Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to talk about something that is an interesting development that is taking place with regard to Ukraine. And we're going to be focusing on this area specifically. Obviously, a lot taking place in this region with Bakhmut, but still basically no movement in the lines whatsoever. So we're going to focus in this area specifically. So we're going to zoom in on Melitopol here. And you can see kind of the big focus here is on a river that runs right here. All right, kind of in that fashion. And it goes all the way down here. There are two routes that cross this river for the Russians to resupply any troops in to the west of this, which would be Crimea, anything over here, to supply troops that are up blocking across the Dnieper River from the Kherson stuff that that Ukraine has taken back in that Kherson Oblast. So there's two bridges here and here in Melitopol. Well, there's been reports that this bridge specifically right here has been destroyed. That leaves only one bridge here. Now, when you zoom out, you can see that if that secondary bridge, if that other bridge gets blown up, it puts Russia in a very precarious position here. So this bridge is destroyed. This route is the only one remaining in this southern region here. Now, Russia can use this route here to cross the river and then resupply, but that puts them extraordinarily close on their supply route to Ukrainian fire. In fact, the distance from here to here is about 30 kilometers. Now, an M777 artillery piece from the United States can reach 40 kilometers, putting the city and these routes, which this white is rail and the orange is road, and these routes in danger of being attacked consistently. So the Russians need to avoid moving up here entirely. So down here in Melitopol, and we scroll back down, we have this bridge out. As I said before, this bridge that's crossing the river right here is out. That leaves this bridge right here. The reality is if the Ukrainians find a way to destroy this bridge, the only way the Russians have to resupply the entirety of what is Crimea and this whole region here has to go through this northern route, because if you remember, let me move this out of the way, this little icon thing. Nope, not that. If you remember, right now the Kerch Bridge is having some, there's construction to rebuild it after it was sabotaged. So the Russians are relying heavily on shipborne, seaborne logistics and road logistics moving through Melitopol. So if you eliminate Melitopol, you eliminate the Kerch Bridge, which some say won't be completely repaired for heavy road traffic until next summer. You essentially have only one place to go, and that's through the northern axis up here. And because of that, you can kind of see the plan that Ukraine is somewhat developing here. And it's quite ingenious, actually. Much like they did in Kherson, where they essentially began to cut off supply lines so that they could envelop and take this whole region right here. They cut off all the supply lines with the bridges and things like that to make it almost impossible to supply troops. You can see there's a new axis forming where the Ukrainians are trying to deny the supply lines that resupply into here, which makes me believe that in the near future, you will see the Ukrainians trying to probably sever any kind of supply lines, any kind of movements via artillery, and then also potentially trying to punch through with troops to drive, and red's the wrong color because red is the enemy, to try and drive a wedge into here and make it so Russia cannot resupply this whole area. Well, if Kherson's any kind of example of what happens to a region that doesn't get resupplied. You can see how it makes this whole Crimean Peninsula and the region that is south of the Dnieper River, where the Russians are setting up defenses, very difficult to continue to supply. So we're seeing a repeat of what happened in Kherson, in that the Russians are going to just be slowly bled out, get hungry, have all their equipment continue to break down, and they're going to find defending this region untenable. And you could see them potentially fall back towards Crimea, where hopefully they could hurry up and get hopefully for the Russians, that is, they get the Kerch Bridge up, and Crimea will become the primary focal point, as more than likely an overwhelming Ukrainian force eventually begins to sweep down and try to push the Russians out of this whole region here. So that's kind of what it's looking like. That's what it's looking like. It's happening. Not a lot of this is going to be taking place anytime soon. There's been some media blackouts, but a lot of that is probably just for feint operations and shaping operations in this region. But going forward, I fully believe that the same principles of cutting off logistics lines that worked in Kherson are going to work in this region bit by bit, especially if the Ukrainians find a way to deny this rail route here and deny the bridge and rail routes there. There is virtually no other way other than by slow ship to get supplies into this region. And furthermore, we've seen the US say you can take the gloves off Ukraine and start hitting into Russian territory with drone warfare. Well, Russian territory just happens to be right here. And Ukraine seems to be building long-distance drones that can strike bridges and things of that nature. And that, even if the Kerch Bridge does get repaired, there's nothing that leads me to believe it wouldn't be a target yet again. So kind of the thought process I'm having about Ukraine, and that's where we're at right now.